So something is happening right now that we have been waiting for some time. But the critical piece to all of this is something happened this past week that is causing the world to question what is going on. So with all this pressure, with all this support going away, what's happening over with Israel and Hamas in Gaza is now starting to pressure, Benjamin Netanyahu, but also other world leaders to take a stand. This means that over the next 2 weeks, what happens will likely be critical for the entire world. So I'm going to explain what's going on here in just a moment. All I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now, let's begin. So here was the big news that came out this week. That 3 Israeli hostages were killed by IDF troops in an unbearable tragedy. This is what they said earlier on this week. Now, the reason why I want to touch on this is because what is happening today. Something critical is happening today, which is likely going to take between 1 to 2 weeks. And when this takes place, this is going to either be a major breakthrough or a major setback for the entire world. Now, here's what's happening. So 3 Israeli hostages were killed by the Israeli Defense Force. This was a mistake. Well, according to reports that are now coming out, these 3 hostages were carrying white flags on a stick when the Israeli troops mistakenly shot them in Gaza. Now, if you don't know what a white flag means, it simply means someone's about to surrender. It means someone's going to negotiate, they are unarmed, they're not going to harm you, and they expect not to be harmed as well. That's what a white flag means in the entire world. It doesn't mean shoot. It does not mean shoot. So that's the first piece of information you need to understand. Here's the next piece. Benjamin Netanyahu said he was shocked when the details emerged of how those people were killed. He was shocked. That was not supposed to happen. Well, here's what's happening now. The Biden administration and other world leaders are now pressuring Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel to either agree to a ceasefire, get all the hostages back immediately. We cannot have delays here. And then they need to figure out where and how they move forward without hurting more civilians. Well, here's what we know. Netanyahu is hinting at new Hamas talks after those hostage deaths. What we are now hearing is that he is open to negotiations. He is willing to sit down with the Qatar mediator and figure out how can they get back the other 170 hostages from Hamas. What do they need to do? And keep in mind the kind of thing that was negotiated, the deal. For every one person that Israel got back, this was a hostage that Israel would receive, then Gaza, or actually Hamas, would get 3 prisoners out of the Israeli prisons. So it was an exchange of 3 to 1. 3 prisoners for 1 hostage. Now, many people were questioning this because they said Hamas attacked Israel. Now Israel is responding to Hamas, and Hamas is winning. They're getting more prisoners out of jail compared to the amount of hostages that they're releasing. And so right there, that's a win. And so some people around the world are saying that that's a horrible precedent to set, that when somebody attacks you and then you respond, the person that first attacked, they're going to get more out of this deal than you? Doesn't make much sense. But this is where some people are saying that the next 2 weeks are going to be critical. Because if this Qatari mediator can negotiate a deal, negotiate a truce, and potentially extend this ceasefire for, let's say, 5 days, if we can see 10 to 20 hostages be released every single day, that's anywhere between 50 to 100 hostages released over the next 5 days. Yes, the bad news is this would likely provide Hamas with additional power, but at the same time, according to reports, the world is getting fed up with all these civilians losing their lives, and now hostages going through all this turmoil, right? Being held captive for 2 months. And then when they go to negotiate and they're holding that white flag, they are shot? That can't happen. So world leaders are pressing Israel to do something immediately. No delays. It has to happen now because we cannot see this. We can't see this for the next 2 to 6 months. This cannot happen. But here's what we know. According to reports, the Biden administration and President Biden himself understand that if this war continues, possibly for the next 2 to 6 months, this is greatly going to reduce his chances of winning the next presidential election, which is coming up in less than 1 year. So that's part of the issue, is that the Biden administration understands and Democrats understand if that this war continues, they are going to be hurt. They are the ones that are going to feel the effects of this because the American people are blaming them. Why are you not doing more? So, here's what we expect to happen over the next couple of weeks. Well, first off, we expect negotiations to continue between the Qatari mediator with Israel and Hamas. That's the first thing we expect to happen. The next thing we expect to happen is Congress is going to come back in session. They will come back within the next 2 weeks, but the Senate will be, well, actually they come back in about 3 weeks, but the Senate will be back in session on Monday. What we expect to happen is there's going to be negotiations. The Senate is planning on passing a supplemental bill that will include funding for Ukraine, likely funding for Israel. But now this is going to likely get pushed back. Because why are lawmakers going to reward Israel for going out there and hurting civilians and their own people, their own hostages? It's not a good thing that we just experienced this past week. And then to come and find out that these hostages were carrying white flags and they were still shot at and lost their lives. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. It's not a great move. So, here's what I can tell you. Over the next 2 weeks, expect more hostages will be released, which also means more prisoners will be released from Israel back to Hamas. We also are expecting Congress to pass a bill, or they are going to vote on a bill. Whether it passes or not, we don't know. But what they decide to vote on and the outcome of that bill in the Senate is going to dictate how much power and leverage Republicans have in the House, which means we could see big changes to border security policies. We could see big changes to funding for Ukraine and to Israel. And we could see massive changes coming up for Social Security, SNAP benefits, Medicare, affordable housing, and really anything for the American people. So, that's what we're expecting at this time. Again, it's all happening right now. Finally, we're starting to see some answers. However, the problem is we're getting these answers because we're seeing tragedy upon tragedy upon tragedy. So, as we get more information, I promise I'll fill you in on all the latest news and updates. But again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.